political will over Palestine should no longer be tolerated. Learning concept must be relevant at any time and space. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Cynthia Arthur. You're watching News at 10. Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin received a phone call from Hamas Political Bureau Chief Ismail Haniyeh, who is now in Doha, Qatar. The Premier said the phone call yesterday was made with the purpose to update him on the latest situation in Palestine. The Prime Minister said he was very disturbed upon hearing from the Hamas leader the plight of Muslims in Palestine, especially in the Gaza Strip, which he described as heartbreaking. On behalf of the people of Malaysia, he expressed condolences and sadness on the loss of lives and injuries inflicted on Palestinians by the Israeli regime's ruthless attacks. Tan Sri Muhyiddin said Ismail expressed his utmost appreciation to Malaysians for their continued extension of aid to Palestinians and concern over the plight of the people in Palestine. In reaffirming Malaysia's stance towards the Palestinian struggle, the Prime Minister said Malaysia was continuing with efforts to fight for the rights of Palestinians even when they were facing these difficult times. The harshest condemnation towards the atrocities of the Zionist regime onto Palestine, Foreign Minister Datuk Sri Hishamuddin Hussein said lack of political will should no longer be tolerated as an excuse to perpetuate Israel's occupation further. He said the bloodshed has to end, along with Israel's impunity in committing untold atrocities. Speaking during the virtual open-ended extraordinary meeting for the OIC Executive Committee at the level of the foreign ministers, he said the international community cannot choose to remain silent and oblivious to these atrocities committed by Israel.
It is an insult when other countries come out and speak about the right of Israel to self-defense and not a single word about the Palestinian rights when they are the ones slaughtered and they are the ones who have been occupied for over 50 years.
Malaysia has continuously condemned the incursion and attacks by the Israeli occupation forces against Palestinians in Al-Aqsa Mosque and continued military airstrikes since last week. Datuk Sri Hishamuddin attributed these actions as in total and blatant disregard of all international laws. Furthermore, they are in violation of the United Nations UN Charter and a war crime under the 1949 Fourth Geneva Convention. Meanwhile, Datuk Sri Hishamuddin also relayed Malaysia's 6 recommendations for OIC in addressing the plight of the Palestinians. Following are the 6 recommendations. In a related development, the United Nations UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres expressed his sorrow and disappointment with a number of civilian casualties in Gaza. He also felt greatly disturbed by the attacks conducted by Israel toward residential areas and buildings housing international media offices. United Nations spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said Israel claimed to have been targeting a Hamas leader, but innocent lives were lost in their attack. Furthermore, any form of targeted attacks towards civilians and media structures are a violation of international laws and must be avoided in any way. The UN Security Council is scheduled to have a meeting today to discuss the violence born out of the ongoing crisis in the Gaza Strip, the worst outbreak of Israeli-Palestinian tension in years. Israel hostilities have stretched into a seventh day with no sign of abating. Yang di-Pertuan Agong, Al-Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah has expressed concern and sadness over the Israeli military aggression and violent attacks on the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Gaza Strip. Comptroller of the Royal Household for Istana Negara, Dato Ahmad Fadil Shamsuddin, said Al-Sultan Abdullah described the incursions and ongoing attacks against the third holiest mosque in Islam and the Palestinians in the last days of Ramadan as heinous, cruel and inhumane. Al-Sultan Abdullah also said Malaysians have always been in solidarity with Palestinians towards achieving the aspirations of an independent and sovereign Palestinian state based on the pre-1967 borders with Jerusalem as its capital. His Majesty also decreed all mosques and surau nationwide to hold Salat Hajat and Doa Salamat after Maghrib prayers tomorrow to seek God's mercy to protect the Palestinians from evil intentions of the Israeli regime. His Majesty also called on all Malaysians, regardless of race and religion, to pray according to their respective beliefs so that the Palestinians are protected and their homeland is freed from the Israeli occupation and oppression. The concept of learning should not be confined within the four walls of a room, and instead it must be relevant at any time and place in line with the new normal. Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin said in the current new norm state of affairs, providing education through new methods such as virtual interactions have been widely used, especially among educators and academicians. In a message in conjunction with the 50th Teachers' Day celebration, Tan Sri Muhyiddin said, throughout the Movement Control Order (MCO), teaching and learning are no longer conducted face-to-face. Instead, teachers use a variety of other methods to connect with students.
Hari ini pelantar pembelajaran digital mendominasi kaedah pembelajaran sebagai sokongan pembelajaran sedia ada yang dijalankan dalam bilik darjah. Sejak 15 Jun 2020, KPM telah mengumumkan platform baru pembelajaran digital untuk guru, pendidik dan murid, iaitu Digital Educational Learning Initiative Malaysia atau Terima. Platform ini merupakan salah satu peluang untuk para guru berusaha memperkasa diri dalam membangunkan bahan pengajaran dan pembelajaran secara digital.
He added, many teachers are now using online applications like Google Classroom, ChikGuTube, and Zoom for home-based learning. The Prime Minister also said that the Education Ministry must continue to listen to suggestions and input from educators, parents and pupils in order to improve teaching and learning PDP platforms to ensure that no students are left behind in the learning process. He then explained that the globalization wave had formed a new direction in education, and in that aspect, educators played an important role in adapting the content of technology-based pedagogy in PDP.
Guru naklah menyediakan mindset bahawa alam sejagat ini merupakan kelas pembelajaran sepanjang hayat bagi anak-anak kita. Dan ini menuntut guru untuk berusaha melahirkan murid yang beradab, cemerlang dan mempunyai sifat ingin tahu. Anak-anak yang ingin kita lahirkan haruslah mampu berdepan bukan saja dengan keperluan pasaran kerja semasa, tetapi bersedia menjadi anggota masyarakat yang berakhlak mulia dan bertamadun serta mampu berdaya saing pada peringkat global.
In achieving that goal, the Prime Minister said the government would also ensure that no student was denied access to proper education, including the Orang Asli, special needs students, MBK, and undocumented children. Tan Sri Muhyiddin said the government would focus on reducing the dropout rate among these groups and ensuring that they also received education like other students.
There is an urgent need to set up a field ICU dedicated to the management of critically ill patients at Kepala Batas Hospital in Pulau Pinang. Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah said the Health Ministry MOH felt this was necessary following the increasing need for COVID-19 intensive care unit ICU beds, as the bed utilization rate has reached over 100%.
As such, the Health Director General said this morning he had the opportunity to pay an official visit to Tuanku Mizan Armed Forces Hospital to observe a dry run of the field ICU ahead of its actual setup at Kepala Batas Hospital. The field ICU to be set up at Kepala Batas Hospital will be adopting the modular integrated concept, capable of providing treatment for up to 27 critical COVID-19 patients who require respiratory assistance as well as other life support equipment. Meanwhile, the number of new COVID-19 cases in the country dropped slightly to 3,780 today compared to 4,140 yesterday. This brings the cumulative figure for positive cases in the country since the start of the outbreak to 470,110. The Health Ministry also reported a staggering 36 COVID-19 related deaths in the past 24 hours. The death toll in the country now stands at 1,902.
Members of the authorities continue their monitoring and enforcement operation today to ensure Malaysians comply with Aidilfitri SOPs. Unlike previous years, the traffic flow at Gombak Toll Plaza went on smoothly without any congestion, showing high SOP compliance. However, compounds were issued to those who still refuse to cooperate and observe SOPs.
RTM survey conducted found most travellers were crossing the state and district border for business purposes. They managed to produce travel permits approved by the police, while some of them who were heading towards vaccination centres showed their vaccination appointment through MySejahtera application. So far, 18 compounds were issued at Gombak Toll Plaza, where a roadblock was mounted since the implementation of MCO 3.0. In Malacca, almost 2,000 houses were inspected by the Malacca Police Contingent during the first and second day of Aidilfitri to ensure no house visits conducted by the people. Malacca Crime Prevention and Community Safety Department's Chief, ACP Muhammad Hedzir Hussein, said no compound was issued, showing high level of SOP compliance in the state during Hari Raya festive season. However, he said since the implementation of MCO 3.0, compounds were issued to a total of 16 individuals who committed various offences in Malacca. Meanwhile, in Kedah, 11 individuals aged between 19 to 40 were slapped with a 5,000 ringgit compound each after attempting to cross the district border without police permit. Baling Police Chief Superintendent Shamsuddin Mama said the compounds were issued during Op Khas Rentas that ended last night. He then reminded members of the public to adhere to SOPs set by the National Security Council to prevent the spread of COVID-19 infections.
Another Terengganu State Exco has been compounded 2,000 ringgit for violating the Standard Operating Procedures SOPs for Aidilfitri under the Movement Control Order MCO. State Welfare, Women Development, Family and National Unity Committee Chairman Hanafi Ahmad was compounded after giving his statement at the Kemaman District Police Headquarters last night.
Kemaman District Police Chief Superintendent Hanyan Ramlan said Hanafia, who is also Chukai State Assemblyman, was found visiting several homes on the first day of Aidilfitri, which was then viraled on social media. He said the police will not compromise with any party found to be violating the SOPs and will take stern action if any violation is committed. Meanwhile, on his Facebook official account, Hanafia said he accepted the punishment and have paid the compound. Hanafia is the second Terengganu State Exco to be compounded after Agriculture and Agro-Based Industry and Rural Development Committee Chairman Dr. Azwan Ibrahim, who is also Jabi Assemblyman, was compounded the same amount for breaching the Aidilfitri SOPs on Friday.
Registrations for income tax numbers for the cooperatives, organizations, trust bodies and real estate categories will be available online starting 18th May. Utilizing the e-Daftar system, registrations involving business trusts and real estate investment trusts, as well as property trusts funds, will also be available.
A statement by the Inland Revenue Board (LHDN) also informed of the implementation of the new prefix setting for individual taxpayers from SG or OG previously to IG. The first phase involves new individual taxpayers, while the second phase involves existing individual taxpayers. However, the change in prefixes will not involve any changes in the income tax numbers for existing taxpayers. The added features for the taxpayer categories through e-Daftar is an initiative under Transformasi Hasil, which is in line with aspirations to improve the quality of services to taxpayers. Currently, the e-Daftar service is only limited to individual tax registers, companies, shares, employers and limited liability partnerships.
National track cyclist Muhammad Fadil Muhammad Zonis continued his fine performance at the International Cycling Union UCI Nations Cup held at the Hong Kong Velodrome by clinching gold in the men's keirin event yesterday. The 24-year-old Sime Darby Foundation rider clocked 10.298 seconds to emerge victorious, leaving behind two World Championship silvers medalists from Japan.
2020 World Championship silver medalist and four-time Asian champion Yuta Wakimoto and 2019 World Championship silver medalist Yudai Nita settled for the silver and the bronze respectively. Meanwhile, Anis Amira Rosidi won the women's 500-meter time trial event bronze medal, clocking 35.493 seconds. World Championship bronze medalist Miriam Vesey of Italy won the race, setting 34.022 seconds, while Spaniard Helena Casas Roig took home silver, 35.493 seconds. Meanwhile, elite cyclist Muhammad Azizul Hasni Awang, who is in Melbourne, Australia, preparing for the Tokyo Olympics, congratulated both the cyclists for their feat.
That's it from us this evening. In our top story, lack political will over Palestine should no longer be tolerated. And we would like to once again wish to all our educators Happy Teachers' Day. Join us for updates at noon at 12:30 tomorrow. I'm Cynthia Arthur. Thank you for watching.